Hi, I'm Shay Oliver. Welcome to the Priority Paradigm. I'm sharing stories of amazing people who've made radical changes in their lives for something more important. Today I'm with Brooke Chesnut, and he has an incredibly interesting story to tell us. So without further ado, Brooke, please tell us your story.
Hello, Shay, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing my story, and I guess the best way to begin would be 33 years ago.
Okay.
At the tender age of 27, I was recruited out of a very, very comfortable restaurant working business to start selling copy machines on the streets of Denver, straight commission. And I certainly backed away from this offer many times because I didn't want to do it, but I succumbed to it for a different lifestyle. However, in that year, 1985, I had also been married for 1 year, and I had a new daughter. My first daughter was going to be born in 1986. And there was a lot of pressure on me, and I had a lot of things going on in my life. And at that time, my very good friend here in Boulder, Dave Braun, gave me a book called The 7 Summits. Have you ever heard of that book?
Oh, yeah.
It was written by Frank Bass and Dick Wells, two entrepreneurs from an industry where they were very successful. And they told the story of their dream to climb the highest peak on each of the 7 continents on the planet. Well, in 1985, Shay, I had no business even thinking about doing something like this because of all the other things that were happening in my life, and it was just happening at the same time.
Sure.
However, having read the book, it planted a seed, 2 seeds actually. One was, how could I become a successful entrepreneur like these guys? How did they do it? What did they do? How did they, change their mindset? How did they, treat other people to get where they are? And the second seed was maybe if I was able to do what they were able to do, that I might have a chance to attempt to climb the 7 summits of the world. So, from 1985, for the first 3 years, I struggled as a horrible sales rep selling copy machines in a very pressure-packed situation, and I was not successful, and I was really in a bad place. But fortunately, I found a mentor that got me over the hump. I started to become successful in this industry, and sure enough, over the next 16 years, I created and built 2 different organizations by hiring, training, mentoring, and coaching young, talented people to be way more successful than me. And in 2001, 16 years later, climbing all the 14ers in Colorado, experiencing great sales success in copy machines and building businesses, my wife at the time and 2 other couples decided that we would go to Africa to experience the African culture, to see the Serengeti. Oh, yeah, and by the way, we'll go to Tanzania and we'll climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Nice. And so in 2001, that's what we did. And we got to the summit and everybody's happy and we're walking down, and that other seed that was planted popped up. And I looked at my friends and their wives and I said, you know what? We just climbed one of the 7 summits of the world. Would you like to do the other 6?
Nice.
And they said yes, after approval from their significant others. And so from that day on, we went to South America to do Aconcagua. We went to Alaska to do Denali for North America. Then we went to Russia to do Everest in the Caucasus Mountains. And then we went to Antarctica and climbed Vincent Massif in 2016.
Wow.
And after I returned from that, I knew after doing 5 successful summits of the world without oxygen and really feeling good about it, number 6 was going to be Mount Everest.
Awesome.
Well, in 2015, right before I left for Antarctica, I had been laid off from corporate America because I could not sell enough 3D printers.
Oh.
And so I left corporate America exactly 3 years ago today,
Oh, wow.
September the 5th, 2015. And so at that point, I had been training and working off hours on being on the stage and speaking and presenting and also teaching, coaching my generation, the older generation of boomers, on how they could work with these younger business people at the time known as millennials. And there was a lot of challenge in that, but I kept working on it and working on it. And I did that through 2015, and I did that through 2016 and 2017. And then I decided that I would join the Mount Everest expedition for 2018. And that's what I have done this year. So the interesting thing here is that I had become a generational expert in helping companies overcome leadership challenges in the workforce. And I was very, very grateful to be hired on at the Daniels School of Business at DU to teach leadership in a cross-generational workforce to their executive education clients.
Nice.
And I did that in 2017, but in 2018, on March 22nd, I left for 10 weeks on an expedition to climb Mount Everest, my 6th summit of the world. And when I landed there with 30 other people, it was a multi-generational international team that I was going to be with for the next 10 weeks. And that, Shay, in of itself, was a great opportunity, but also a great challenge. So, to continue, if I may, I decided, since I was laid off and I was in this speaking realm with the generations, I knew that I wanted to give back to corporate America, to people who are my age, who aren't allowed, can't retire, can't do it yet, but love my work, but I want to work with these younger people. Can you help me? And so I did that. But now, not only was I doing that, but I was also immersed in this amazing adventure, and I had to develop relationships.
Right.
With all these different team members from all over the world, and they range from the age of 24 to the age of 61.
Oh, wow.
By the way, on March 3rd of 2018, I celebrated my 60th birthday.
Cool.
So we start on the expedition, and lo and behold, all these people have such amazing resumes. And the resumes that I saw, that they had climbed the same mountains I had, all the right gear, all the right fitness. But for whatever reason, when we got evaluated, Shay, on our first rotation, not even near base camp, some of the folks were not prepared. They were not ready to go. I was very surprised. And as we continued up the mountain, I noticed that our expedition leader, in order for us to be successful, made a huge point about acclimatizing slowly. And if anyone's ever tried to climb big, big mountains, acclimatization is very, very important. And so we continued on up to base camp, and it was funny because these younger guys were much stronger than me. And at the end of the first rotation and the second rotation, guess who came in last? Every time, it was me.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell from their body language and their lack of communication that they're like feeling stuck with grandpa here. That he is holding us back. We're not going to make it. He's going to be very challenging to have on our team, so on and so forth. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we continue to get to base camp. And from there, before we even step foot on the mountain, we've got to do all these ceremonies. But, you know, there are 4 distinct camps that will acclimatize us.
Right.
And if we do it correctly, we're going to be putting ourselves in a position to succeed. And that is one thing that I've learned from doing an Everest expedition, is that you put your people, or the guides put their people in a position to succeed. And when you think about the entrepreneurial world and the entrepreneurial journey, these business thinkers and thought leaders think about putting your people in a position to succeed. Help them acclimate to this new environment, adjust their body temperatures, their mind, their breathing, adjust to the different conditions.
Right.
Not only in business, but on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have a really good chance to succeed. Well, as we continue up to Camp 1, then Camp 2, we're finally going to Camp number 3, which is at an elevation of 25,000 feet. And I looked at my Sherpa, because we all had a Sherpa to help us, and I looked at him and I said, today could be my day. Because on the other mountains I was on around the world, for whatever reason, when I get higher above 20 to 22,000, I feel stronger for whatever reason. And sure enough, all these younger guys and I lined up, and 5 hours into this climb up the Lhotse face, there's a picture of me, and they are all way behind me.
Awesome.
I didn't say anything, but they were all struggling. They couldn't breathe. They had hypoxia, headaches, nausea, you name it. And I was the 3rd climber to get to Camp 3, and they were in shock. And my Sherpa was smiling from ear to ear.
I bet.
Okay? And so I'm feeling pretty good. We're at 25,000 feet. We spend the night. It's a horrific night. The next morning we wake up, and I look up, and sure enough, there's camp number 4 and the top of the world right there.
Whoa.
And I say to the guys, why can't we do this now? Because we've been there for 8 weeks. And they said, nope, we're not ready. We made it to Camp 3. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom, rest for 5 days, and then we're going for the summit. Yes. Well, at that point, we're ready to go down, and I had some equipment problems with my crampons, and I took off a glove on each hand really fast to tighten my crampons. Put them back on, everything's fine. I spent practically the whole day descending to Camp 2, spent the night, everything's fine. Some of the guys are perhaps telling me confidentially that they're not going to make it, because they felt so horrible getting up to Camp 3. And I said, no, you'll be fine, blah, 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 you'll be fine. Well, sure enough, the next day, going down from Camp 2, Shay, the guys all decided to stay. And I was just getting down to close to base camp, and I sat down and I took off my gloves to get something to eat and drink. And I noticed that the very tips of my pinkies had turned black.
Oh.
They didn't hurt. When I touched them together, they felt like pieces of wood. I've never had frostbite. And I'm just going, this is really weird, you know? Nothing hurts. Everything works fine. I feel fine. And I showed it to my Sherpa, and I could tell he was not in a good place when he saw this. But I blew it off. I said, you know what? Let's just go to base camp. we'll talk to the ER docs and they'll fix me up. I'll rest for 5 days. I'll be good as new. He says, okay. I go into the tent, volunteer doctor from India. I take off my gloves. I show him my fingers, and he looks at me. Without any conversation, he says, you must leave the mountain right now.
Oh.
And I stop. I go, I start laughing. I said, I was trying to be very professional, but I said, who are you to tell me that I have to leave because of my pinkies? Dude, can't you just do what you do nice, fix them, and they'll be fine. Let's warm them up. They'll be fine. No, you must leave right now. And I blew up. Okay? Lost all control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Understandable.
And he is this gracious, humble, so soft-spoken Indian volunteer physician, and he motions to his partner, bring the picture. They bring a photograph of a guy last year, same thing as me, who didn't leave the mountain, and he lost all 4 of those fingers and all 3 of these.
Oh.
That was the moment when I turned from this raging lunatic to a sobbing, crying uncontrollably as my Sherpa consoles me, because I knew at that point that my dream is over, because I will not go home to greet my children, friends, and family being called stubby. And so, if you've ever been on a journey as an entrepreneur, at some point in that journey, you hit a moment where you have to make a very difficult decision. Mm-hmm. And this was that moment for me, that I had to leave in less than 3 hours. I had to leave the mountain, and I had to take out my credit card just to add insult to injury and charter a helicopter to fly me from base camp all the way into Kathmandu to a hospital, to an ER unit where they wrapped my fingers, told me I had to stay for 4 days and come back every day to be rebandaged. I didn't say goodbye to the team members. I didn't get to say goodbye to the expedition leaders. They got me out of there, and I was gone. It took me an hour and 5 minutes to get to the hospital. They wrapped me up. So here I am in a third world country, living in some hotel with all my stuff everywhere, and I'm in a fetal position on the bed, crying my eyes out, bandaged, as a complete failure, disappointment, inadequate, loser. You didn't get it done. That's the feeling I have. You ever had those feelings sometimes? As you take this journey of entrepreneurship or CEO leadership or director of HR?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've all had it.
Duh.
And so I looked at my fingers, and I had no one to talk to, no internet, no phone, no computer, nothing. And I'm looking at my fingers, and I'm going, holy cow. They still work. I still have them. And I've learned something. I've learned that sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And I learned that I made the right decision, because now I felt like, okay, I'm going to take these bandages. I had to leave the bandages on, but I got up, got undressed, took a shower, and went out into the streets of Kathmandu to acclimatize myself to the environment, found some community at the pub and had some beer and pizza, told them the story because everyone was wondering why I'm bandaged. And that's when I knew that sometimes success is never final, but failure is never fatal.
Uh-huh.
It is the will and the drive that counts to continue. And so I went back to the hotel and I, looked myself in the mirror and I got on a plane and I flew home and greeted my family with all of my digits so that if for some reason, if there is another opportunity, I will be able to say, I am prepared for what's next.
That's beautiful.
So I returned from Everest. I'm home for 2 days. My high school friend, Jimmy Coughlin, who owns this convention company, they put on these huge events, calls me. He says, Brooke, you made it home. It sounds great. I saw all your posts on Facebook, and I am so amazed and so impressed. And oh my God, what you went through, the stories that you have. I would like to book you as my keynote speaker at this convention in Miami in 2019. Would you do that and tell your story? Okay. And so since I've returned, Shay, from the mountain, and the messages I got from this multi-generational team being labeled as an old fogey, being discarded, right?
Mm-hmm.
To then being embraced as, OMG, this guy can really do it at high altitudes, and being a part of the team and being embraced, to then losing the opportunity to do what I came there for, yet learned valuable lessons.
Yes.
About making tough decisions, being in the moment, what's most important, and looking forward, because I was a broken man in that hotel room.
Oh, I'm sure.
I was. So now what's happened is everyone wants to hear the story.
Uh-huh.
But I want to make it meaningful, not about being on the mountain, but using the mountain and having acclimatization and building community and listening better. Those three things is what an audience can take away and apply it in their surroundings with their employees and help get them to these different levels on the mountain as you try to summit your Everest.
Very cool.
And that is my story and how I'm leveraging it to help business owners and business entrepreneurs become much more effective.
So let me ask you a quick hypothetical question. What would have happened if you looked at your pinkies and your pinkies weren't black and you headed up and made it to the summit?
Well, that's what I was expecting to do.
Well, I know that. Would that have been a better outcome for you?
The answer to that is no. The story is way better because I had a freak accident. I didn't plan it, but it just happened. And because of that, the dreams, the goals, the 33 years of dreaming about this since reading that book were over. It's over. But the lesson that, regardless of what you're doing, the lesson that I love was, if success is never final and failure is never fatal, you're going to get another shot. You're going to get another opportunity. And that's why I feel that the lessons learned are better, because I did not make it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to give back.
Mm-hmm.
Others that maybe are facing problems, not from climbing a mountain like that, which is very difficult, but just being in their business.
So usually I wait a little bit to ask this, but you've had a hell of an interesting experience going and failing in what your goal in life, in a lot of ways in your life, was to hit these 7 summits. What is the most important thing in life?
For me, the most important, sorry.
It's all right. Take your time.
Um, um, I discovered it a long time ago that the most important thing for me is to connect, to train, to mentor, to harness the power of these younger individuals and help them become successful earlier on in life, overcome obstacles, have a much easier learning curve. And that's what I got to experience. And then here it is 25 years later, and those three people come back to me and thank me for giving them that opportunity, teaching them things that no one else had taught them. Mm-hmm. And I feel that we don't have enough leadership like that in the world today. And I want to help people overcome their obstacles, maybe using the mountain, but also some of the great things I did with young people back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Sure, absolutely. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. So let's hop onto let's go back onto the mountain if we could for a minute. As you were climbing up the mountain, and as you were watching those kids early on that were going faster than you, and you were feeling down in the gut, oh my God, I'm the old man. I'm grandpa here on the mountain, and I'm dragging this team down. What was it inside of you that said, I'm going to keep going, and for lack of a better way of putting it, beat those young whippersnappers to the top?
Yeah, great. I'll tell you exactly. I felt fine, never had an issue with breathing or anything. I was just slow. I'm really slow. And that's between 15 and 19, 20,000.
Right.
I'm just always behind. And what was interesting was the guys from all over the world, I mean, they're in their 20s, 30s and 40s, but there was a group of 5 of them that were all 49. They joined, they made their own club called the 49er Club because they were killing, they were just killing it. And I was not invited to join,
mm-hmm.
And so I just thought to myself, you know what, Brooke, steady as she goes. And even my Sherpa's like, oh man, dude. I mean, the pictures say it all. Okay. I'm out there by myself. There's no one behind me. There's no one in front of me. I'm the last one to get in there. And, I knew I was going to be fine. I was a little worried. I talked to the guides. They said, Brooke, you're doing fine, because I wasn't sick. I didn't have problems breathing. But when you go to a different altitude, boy, that changes the game.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. So as you did this, you've had some great experience in business and some awesome experiences on mountains. Talk to me a little bit about what has to happen inside and what has to happen with the team, and is one more important than the other?
Well, I think you have to start here in your heart. You can see here, if you start here, you have to have this foundation, create a foundation of trust, which will then begin to build successful behavior. And I think the stronger you are as an individual, then people start to see that it is all about the team. It's about building community. It's about finding like-minded individuals who have complementary skills, where you can come together, and I call it a mastermind group. The 3 of you have this 3-legged stool, and the 3 of you are accountable, and you help each other, and you create ideas and concepts that really, I feel, make a team much stronger than the individual himself. Cool. And so starts with me, but then I want to get it into my folks.
Sure. So to get it into your folks, you've said that you have to start with you. How is it that you have built the internal strength to do not just the mountain climbing, but to build the companies, to do the things that you've done? What have you done, and how have you become a stronger person to become the person you are today?
I knew how difficult our business was, and I knew that these young people needed to develop some skill sets, because when you're in this, regardless of what the industry is, it is not about the sale. It is not about the machine, the technology. It's not about the commission. It's not about any of that. And these young people would kind of look at me like, what? You're like the sales manager. I said, I know. But here's what you need to understand. We need to create, you need to create or learn how to create deep, meaningful relationships. Mm-hmm. And once you do that, regardless of what industry you're in, but you will impact your business, your family, your community, your church, your school, your children, everything will be impacted when you find out the secret. And that's what I found of building relationships. And so I wanted to teach that to these young people, because that's what put me over the hump. That's what started building referrals. That's what blew up my business, and I needed help. So I had to teach them what I did.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. So as a mountaineer and an adventurer, somebody who wanders off, how many of the big mountains you've climbed? You've climbed all of the 14ers here in Colorado, and have hit 5 of the major summits. How many of these have you climbed with a team, and how many have you climbed alone?
Yeah. Well, Kilimanjaro, we had our, spouses. That's a great experience. Aconcagua, we were on a team of just the guys in the neighborhood, so that was fine. Denali, that is a different beast. Imagine, Shay, it's me and my 2 friends, and we're on this airplane, and they drop us off on a glacier in Alaska with 8 other people that we have never met. And we are all roped together with 65-pound packs and dragging 95-pound sleds.
Jeez.
Up a glacier, because in Denali, there are no Sherpas.
Right.
None. So it's me, my 2 friends, and people from Illinois, Arkansas, Seattle, Texas, you name it. Okay? And so we have to set up our own tents, prepare our own food, do everything, versus Everest, where it's all done for you.
Right.
But on Denali, you're so far north, that mountain creates its own weather systems. And we got trapped for 6 days and 6 nights at 14,000 feet, unable to move, and literally had to stay in a 40 below bag for almost the entire time.
Oh.
Because the temperatures are well below 35 to 40 below zero, and 70-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh, geez.
For 6 days and 6 nights. Well, when the storm passed, we found that 4 people had died from other expeditions. Wasn't ours. And then these other people came down from high camp, literally walking dead. They had to be airlifted off, hypothermia. Half of our team raises their hand and say, I'm done. I'm through. I can't do this. I didn't sign up for this. I want to go home. We don't have Sherpas. We can't do this if we don't do this together. And right now we're going to be able to do it, because I had to go to each and every tent and talk to each and every person to tell them how strong they were, how good we are, look what we've done, look what we've accomplished, da-da-da-da, and they stayed with it. And we went to 17,000, got trapped for 5 more days.
Oh my God.
Then we had 1 more day, the last day, summit day, very windy, and halfway up, 5 of them had to turn around and go back. They couldn't do it. But 3 of us from Colorado, 2 from Seattle, we made it to the summit of Denali.
Wow.
And that was truly epic because it was just our team. And the team, if you don't have a team, you're not going to make it. Sorry, you're not. So that was another valuable lesson that I used my sales career and those messages to help this team come together to get us to that goal. But that was truly a whole nother story with a whole different, mentality.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. What about here in Colorado, the 14ers? Have you climbed any of those alone?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And
sure. Yeah. And I guess back to your other question, I never climbed any of those big mountains alone.
right.
You're always with a team, with the group.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I've done a few of the 14ers, but I prefer to have a partner.
Sure. So you were able to take on Denali a group that part wanted to go home, part were ready to say, it's not worth risking my life to go up on top of this mountain. What is it that makes you a good leader and able to rally people to do something like that?
I think it's how I communicate. It's not coming from here. It's coming from here. And whether you're speaking on a stage or you're sitting in a tent, they get it. And I try to go back and tell them all the great things we have done and everything we just accomplished in the first 12 days of our expedition. We are really something. And here we are surviving. We made it through the storm. We're going to be fine. We're strong. We've got exactly what we need. So I think that's a difference, a huge difference, Shay, whether you're in sales or whether you're in climbing or whether you're in retail. I mean, whatever you want to be in, people can tell when it's coming from the heart.
Absolutely.
Versus coming from here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so now I want to take you back to Kathmandu. I want to go back into that hotel room and you're laying there wallowing. I mean, rightfully so. You were looking at the end of a dream. And yet you found the strength to come out and become someone else. In many ways, the person that got up and took that shower and headed to the bar or to the pub was somebody else. What was going through your head that got you up out of that bed?
Great question. And I believe what really made the difference for me, because you're right, since I have come back, I am a different person. And I think the thing that I thought about the most in the fetal position as the broken man was that my appendages were intact and that I could then still be an influential person for my 3-year-old granddaughter.
Oh.
Another generation who, now has a grandfather that has all of his fingers. Wants to hear that story again, whatever, my daughter, they know about it, but here's my granddaughter. I mean, that's the next generation, the legacy. And so, Brooke, do something for the next generation, for them, and myself and my daughters. And sure enough, that's what I was thinking about. And that's what pulled me through.
And how did your emotional state change as you laid there thinking about your family, about the granddaughter, about your daughters, about the next generation?
My emotional state went from, instead of being broken, instead of being considering myself this failure, and I didn't want to see anybody, that's when I thought, well, let's go, let's freshen up, because I was a mess. Deep breath and go out. And people, sure enough, are asking me, dude, what's with the band? And I told them the story. And they're like blown away. And I go, wow, they really like that story. And I didn't know. I'm just telling them what happened. You know, I had
Sure.
no idea, but I could tell people were impacted. So I knew that at that point, I had acclimatized away from the hotel, which was a prison, and got out into the streets and started to build community.
Uh-huh.
It goes right back to the message, Mr. Entrepreneur. Surround yourself with complementary skill sets. Who are your Sherpa? Who in your company are your Sherpa who are going to help and be there and be gracious and humble and work their butts off for the vision? That's it.
It's interesting as I listen to your story, and I think about so many of us hit a point in life where we think in a binary sense. It's either I have achieved the goal or I have come short. I have failed. And you were in that position of failure. You didn't make the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And yet you walked away a successful man. How do you define failure and success today?
Some people have said, Brooke, you got where? You got to Camp 3? Dude, you did it. You've been there. You've done it. You're a success. And I look at them and I don't feel that way. I have a hole in my heart that is now moved into my belly, into this foundation, this piece here that I set, once I started, I set the goal. And I felt like, I felt like that big failure, but at the end of the day, the story is so good because I'm successful enough to make the hard decisions so that if I want to, I have another opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I get to continue. I get to be prepared. And that's when I decided, and it took me a long time to decide.
Certainly.
But I've decided that I'm going to go to Australia in 2019 to do number 6, which is Kosciuszko, which is like climbing up Lookout Mountain, okay? With a 12-pack of Foster's Lager, okay?
Sure.
That's the highest point in Australia, okay? Great. Take my girlfriend and we'll do it together. And then in 2020, I am ready to go back to Everest for one more try. Second time around, it's not, sometimes you win, it's I've learned. I know what to expect.
So what's the definition of success for you?
I think the definition for me is having learned a great deal. Different lessons, different messages, different human beings that are from different cultures and how they react to different situations on a team. But more importantly, taking those lessons and bringing them back into a story of 60 minutes that an audience can be impacted by and think about it differently.
So it's not necessarily standing on the summit for a few moments, but it's something inside of you?
Yeah, but it's not something that I want to keep inside me. I feel there's value and I want to share it. And if people can gain value from that and can do something with their family or their association, whatever it is, people aren't going to be going up there to climb that mountain. I get that. But this is the stuff that happens. Mm-hmm. And what happened to me was a freak accident. And the orthopedic surgeon here in Boulder looked at my fingers and he said, young man, you are lucky that Indian doctor got you out of there as fast as he did, because it progresses fast, which is why that guy lost all his fingers.
Yeah, no doubt. So what do you tell people now that face whatever their Everest is and they're laying in the hotel room in Kathmandu? What do you tell them to get them up off the bed?
I would tell them to really listen to your heart. Really think about what you've just done and the decisions that you've made. Because at the end of the day, if you have another opportunity to rise above, explain what you've learned, accept it. It may not be what you want, but you're going to get another opportunity. You're going to be wiser for it, but you also are going to be stronger for it. And I'm feeling way stronger now than I have ever felt because of this experience.
So you have a very unique perspective. You've done something very few people on earth have done. You've reached right up next to the top of the world. Which is harder in life? The physical challenges of going up a mountain like that, or what it does to what's inside of you?
I think it's what's inside of you. It's the mental toughness of getting in and out of a tent that's on rock and ice for 64 days. Shay, that's a hard deal. It's a long, long process. You must be mentally tough. And what happens to your body over that time is you just get withered away. I lost 23 pounds, but your body just gets withered away from being at that altitude. Wow. And so you have to be able to be prepared for that. And you've got to be prepared up here. And I was fighting the demons of these younger guys labeling me and my own, physical fitness, which I felt pretty good. But I was by far the oldest guy there. So,
yeah, that's very cool. So let me ask you something. So you now got a very, very different perspective than when you started making those sales calls when you were 27 years old and started going to try to make a living for yourself and start your life out. You've been right up near the top of the world. You've almost lost your hands. If you had an opportunity to go back and talk to that young man who was trying to figure out how to be a salesman and trying to figure out how to move forward in his life, what would you tell him?
I would tell him that what I would tell him is it's very important to develop, connect, and build a network, a tribe, people that believe in you, people that trust you, people that when they come across a piece of information that they know is going to help you, they send it to you. And it takes years. And young people don't have the patience that it requires. Mm-hmm. But that's what I never did that. It was all on me. It was my own thing. And today it's about building a network and connecting with people. And the more you do and the more they understand what you do, but even more importantly than that, they want to know why you do it. They know what it is and they know how you do it, but why? Why are you doing that, Brooke? Why would you go climb Everest? Really? What are you, crazy? It's not about Everest. It's about the 7 summits, and that just happens to be one of them.
So what would you tell the man who landed in Nepal, who was about to head up the mountain before he got into base camp 1? Would you tell him anything about, what would you tell him? Would you tell him anything before he headed on that fateful journey?
Keep your gloves on.
Well, that would be pretty good advice.
And it's pretty much common sense. But up at 25,000 feet, it's not that cold. Denali was way colder than Everest. Way colder. Never got frostbite on Denali, but when you take off when your skin is exposed at that altitude, the tips of the ring finger and the pinkies, those capillaries and tissue, they call it flash freezing, flash frozen. And so it takes about a day or two before it really affects, but sure enough, they don't mess around. And I was shocked because there's no pain. There's no pain. So how could there be a problem if there's no pain?
No doubt.
Just keep your fingers covered, okay?
That's good advice. Would you tell that guy there at beginning to head up toward base camp? What would you tell him to prepare for when he's in that hotel room?
When he's in the hotel room,
would you tell yourself anything that would have changed how you reacted when you discovered you were leaving the mountain and you were now heading to a hotel room and to a hospital? Or would you just let it play out like it did?
I would let it play out like the way it did. I mean, such deep, powerful lessons there to be learned. I mean, that was a long 1 hour chopper ride.
Sure.
Which was a beautiful opportunity, but not the state of mind I want to be in.
Cool. So since while we are on the story talking about change and who you are and personally, just because you've done a lot of things in the mountains, tell me your best mountain climbing story, other than the one where your fingers are involved.
Okay, so that was Everest. The other, epic mountain climbing story was, of course, Denali.
Mm-hmm.
Without question.
Yeah,
because so many climbers are successful on Everest. Everest has been summited 5,000 times, a little over 5,000 times. So all those climbers that go there go to Denali. It's only 20,000 feet. But because there's no Sherpa, they fail. They're not successful on Denali. Weather, weight, Sherpa, all these things play into it. It's a whole different experience. So I feel the story and the slides and the presentation I do on Denali is a whole different message than Everest. But Everest is the mystique, it's like, wow, the highest, the tallest, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Denali is to be respected more than anything else. So the thing that's interesting is that over 5,000 people have summited Everest, but less than 460 people have done the 7 summits. So that gives you an idea of what it's like to do all 7 summits.
Yeah, that's not very many people.
No, that's not. And that was in 2016. So that number may have changed. There's the oldest guy, there's the youngest person, all that stuff.
Oh, sure.
But at the end of the day, Everest and Denali are to be reckoned with.
No doubt. So yeah. You have some wonderful stories. I bet you're absolutely fun to go and listen to on the stage. If somebody wants to learn more about you or get a hold of you, what's the best method what are the methods they could use to do that?
They can go to my website, and there is a speaker page there which outlines my stories and my lessons, because I've put together workshops, seminars, breakout training sessions for sales team, admin team, HR teams, C-level executives, and customized to their industry what might resonate, or if they're having a specific challenge in these areas, what I would be able to bring to their group in a facilitated workshop environment. I did this at DU, and it really worked well. That's the best way to get a hold of me, is through my website. And then I have a LinkedIn profile with video, and also, a list of all the things that I've, I guess after being in corporate America for 30 years and now doing this, combining the two, I had no idea it would make sense, but it really has. It has really brought together, the dysfunctionality and the disconnection of generations, but how that can come back together over here on the mountain.
Right.
When you have adversity. And I know that people are having adversity and challenges in the workforce.
And I always have and always will.
So that's, I think that's the value that I can bring to a conference, to a breakout session, because Shay, the pictures, the images tell the story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they do. With the setting you're in is a little bit unique in
Yeah.
those. Well,
Yeah.
very cool. Well, I greatly appreciate you taking this time today and sharing your personal story with us. That's really touching that you've taken the time to do this, and I really have enjoyed our discussion. But I know I always end with the same question, and that question is, what question did I forget to ask you?
Well, let's see. I told you when I was going back, you didn't ask me that. I guess the question you didn't ask, all right, Brooke, so when you complete the 7 summits, then what? What are you,
Oh,
what are you going to do then?
great question.
What are you going to do then?
Great
What's
question.
next, Brooke?
What's
And
next?
I'm still, I still have to think about that, but I want to complete this first and then think about that. But it'll be something. But I think that would have been a good one, Shay.
So do
But
you?
I hope this was worthwhile, and
Absolutely.
it hit what you were looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been a fascinating conversation. I love adventure stories. So this has been something from a personal level. I love listening to those type of stories. I'm gonna have to come see you speak sometime. So let me say thank you. I appreciate your time today and look forward to coming and seeing you speak sometime.
That sounds great, Shay.